years ago, something like that, I joined an online group. It was part of a restart program. A friend of mine who's a nutritional practitioner, I forget her exact title, but I've known her for a long time, was putting this group together. And I decided to join in. Restart's a great program for rethinking how you're eating. And we got more out of it than just that. So after we did our 6 weeks, whatever the time frame was, we had such a connection with the people in the group that that's when we formed the group to do positive intelligence. And we've talked about that. We can link back to the episodes on that.
Yeah.
And so we became connected on such a deep spiritual level. All of us were different ages, different life circumstances. And yet, we engaged on these journeys together and formed a strong bond. And one of the women, she's a good 15 or more years older than me, lived locally. Not everybody lived locally, but we decided we'd meet up in person. And I think I had suggested meetings on a greenway to walk. And I remember her saying to me, "Oh, I don't really walk, but I'll meet up with you to do that." And so we met up at a greenway. We had been meeting on Zoom for, ever. And this was the first time meeting in person. And we took a walk on this greenway. And I don't know how long it was, but before I knew it, this woman was walking miles a day, like every day. She just took off with her walking. And we went, I went back to visit her. She was living with her daughter at the time. And we went to take a walk, and there's a greenway near the house. And so we set off to walk, and it started pouring rain. And we had rain jackets on, although mine didn't. I gave her my phone to zip up in a pocket to keep it secure because that's all I was worried about. And so we came back to the house. We were soaking wet. It's like, I'll put our clothes in the dryer. She gave me a robe. She had made us, I think it was like salmon salad. We were very conscious of what we were eating. And we sat there in our robes and we ate our salads together while my clothes dried in the dryer. And it was such a fun time. And her and I are still, along with our great mentor, are still in the group. Some other people that were in there originally have left, and we've merged with this new group of women. Um, but there's just this really cool bond that's there. And she's been retired for years. And so she's a different place in her life and has other different challenges than I do. I still have the 16-year-old at home. Um, but it gives perspective, when you get to spend time with people of different generations and just a lot of fun together.
Well, this is Don.
And this is Gina with Focused Healthy Family. This is podcast number 181. We're getting close to 200, Don. Today we're talking about intergenerational mingling. So before we get into that, Don's got a tip.
Let me get back to it, make sure I'm there. It's it, there
Do
we
we
go.
do the tip before the joke? I forget.
Well, it doesn't matter. Um, this one comes from wow, lindsaypollack.com. I don't know what this has got to do with who Lindsay Pollack is, but I found this one. I thought it says create opportunities for intergenerational mingling. And it says, left to their own devices, employees may tend to bunch up in age-based groups. So it can be helpful to use team building activities or develop collaborative projects that pair younger employees with older ones to foster greater atmosphere of understanding in the office. So this is kind of talking about um, in an office, but it's also something we're going outside of that with this. So that that's kind of the tip for today.
Okay. And I have some jokes. Um, hey, Don, did you hear about the guy whose whole left side was cut off?
Ooh, wow. Whole left side cut off. No, I have not.
He's all right now. I
That
once heard a joke about amnesia, but I forgot how it goes.
Wow, these are funny. They're so funny. They're stupid, but they're funny at the same time.
Um, there was a sign on the lawn at a drug rehab center that said, "Keep off the grass." So we have some fun jokes for today. So what we're talking about is intergenerational mingling, intergenerational friendships. And Don, if you want to start with your article that you found that kind of kicked us off on this topic.
Well, it was I gotta find it again. Um, it was just talking about um, this was they were going talking. This was a comes from teenvogue.com, so it was really talking about yeah, intermingling uh, teens with olders. One to be able to, you know, they feel like seniors that have younger friends feel younger, but it also the wisdom of olders towards youngers and getting them intermingled. It was just an interesting art. It wasn't a huge article, but it was just talking about how much it can be helpful for both sides of that equation, the teen versus the seniors.
Do we want to pause a minute? I can't find my paper.
Hold on a second.
Oh, it's on the floor. I found an article called The Positive Impact of Intergenerational Friendships for Seniors. And I found it at a very interesting website. It's called Where You Live Matters. It's a nonprofit senior living service. And we can share more
Yeah, we'll
information
put that up on the
about that,
website.
but there's some great resources there. So they're talking about the impact of intergenerational friendships. So when I think of intergenerational mingling, as you mentioned, Don, two things come to mind. When my older kids were younger, we were homeschooling and we had another group of homeschoolers, and there was an assisted living in our community, and we went there once in a month and we did activities with the seniors. And as someone who's worked in geriatrics, I loved that opportunity for my kids to be around older people, not be afraid of them, not, um, and I know how rewarding it was to them that the seniors enjoyed it as well. And you can form friendships from that. Yet when I think of an intergenerational friendship, I think of something um, a little more sustaining than, monthly interactions or whatever,
Mm.
and just the impact. And this article talks about that. Um,
Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to, as we homeschool, it kind of starts out early in the fact that as homeschooling, our kids weren't always in the same age group as you were in school. So they were able to see people that are a lot older, people that are younger. We got that intergenerational beginning at the very beginning of homeschooling,
and
and
it,
if we
I
could
mean,
grow up with that, that would be.
technically, they were mostly of the same generation, yet it does speak to, in school, kids are put in the same year.
Mhm.
They're all the same within the same year of each other for the most part. And life's not like that. um, and so thus, as you mentioned with homeschooling, and younger kids can learn from older kids, and it's a much more natural environment, in my opinion. It's more like what the real world is like out there. And so, yeah, it kind of breaks down those kind of age barriers that can happen is with school. It kind of sets you up for that as you're put with your same age peers. And even though you might not get along with those people, there's nothing wrong with having a friend when you're 12 who's 10 or 14, or, and obviously when you're an adult, we don't talk about that a whole lot. There's retired people and there's people still working, and yet it doesn't mean you can't be friends with someone in that boat. It looked at very differently. Just like Don and I, who are
I
11,
was gonna,
who are
I was gonna
11
say that,
years
yeah.
apart. We're really sort of in two different generations. Especially you being the youngest of your family, who are definitely all baby boomers. You're sort of at the very tail end of that generation, and I'm very much Generation X. So looking at this, it talks about um, seniors and issues with depression and talking about having opportunity to connect with younger people. It can give them more purpose in life. It talks about, seniors having younger people who can help them with technology and other aspects. And it also talks about the opposite benefit of seniors being mentors to younger people,
Mm.
them learning from their life experience and having that insight, like me being friends with someone who's retired already, you, it gives you insight into their life. I mean, for me, working in geriatrics, I have that opportunity for that as a professional. And working in the independent living facility I now work in, it's a very different relationship because it's not a healthcare setting per se. And so I do, the patients there often consider me a friend. We have a different dynamic of interacting, um, and it's fun.
Well, and you now you in thinking about it, there's this it's called SCORE. It's an organization, and it's retired seniors that come back and counsel to business owners, different people. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of intergenerational kind of for business wise, being able to, because they can offer you some wise information about being in business. I didn't find it with the one I met with, but I'm sure there are a lot that are out that are sharing what they're good information, I guess.
Yeah, and so it's giving, sometimes seniors have more time on their hands and just being involved in the community. People talk about when they retire, if they don't have hobbies or things. I've met so many seniors who just kept working their 70s, their 80s, their 90, and then I've met so many they retire and then they fall and break an arm or something happens. And is that, a testament to them? Do they have other things in their life that matter as much as their job did? And so thinking about that element and having those things in their life. Um,
Well, that article it reminded me the other part that article talked about that they're also trying to intermix like coffee shops and having some that are on university campuses and intermingling different things that like shopping venues, all that kind of stuff that come together in like college towns, college areas to kind of mix up that audience, I guess.
yeah. And I know I've seen this idea, and I'm sure it exists out there. I've never seen one in person where there's a senior center and a daycare
Mm.
that kind of coincide with each other. The closest thing that I've come to that is I worked at an assisted living, and the memory care was a separate building from the assisted living. And the walking path, I'm flinching because the cat is on my lap and her claws are sharp. On the path to get from one building to the other, there was a daycare that was kind of parked in the middle of the two. And I enjoyed, as I walked from one to the other when the kids were out on the playground, um, seeing them out there playing. The seniors, per se, didn't necessarily get to have that interaction just because the way the buildings were set up with stairs and that. But it's something I've always thought about, um, having a setting where they can have those interactions. This article talks again about intergenerational programming. So it talks about in some families, you have that built in. You think about when my mom grew up, they lived in New York City for a while. They lived with her grandparents, and even when they moved to New Jersey, their aunts and uncles were around all the time, and so you had that intergenerational mixing within a family. You had some of that, Don. Most of your family was out there in Missouri, and where cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents are intermingling with each other.
Well, that kind of I, it's drawing back to me now, so because that one of the um, conversations I talked about, and I never did much with it, was um, talking about the trend towards going back to that kind of place um, because of the way our society's set up now. Get the cat out of the way. Um, but how we're moving more and more back to that place of, you know, grandmother and parent and possibly child living in one area. We're not quite there yet, but it's kind of the trend we're living on because our economy is not allowing a lot of children to move out, you know. So they're having to do that kind of mixing of families again.
Um, yeah, we have good friends, family friends, or our older kids, they're best friends with their two kids, and their mom lived with them until she passed, and it was a neat dynamic because we were involved in scouts with this family and other activities, and we got to know grandma really well, and just that she was a big part of the family there. Um, so that sometimes happens, and sometimes it happens out of necessity. Where you bring your parent into the home who's aging and elderly, and you still have your kids at home. So it can be very challenging, but it can also be a benefit. Um, to have grandparent grandchild, they can have a more intimate interaction than they would otherwise, if especially if they're living in different states, but even at a distance. Um, Being in the same household, sometimes that's too much, but just being in the area and having the opportunity to interact with them. It's also good to, look outside family because sometimes families are complicated, right? But
Yeah.
when you have that opportunity, just interact with other people in the community, whether it's a senior center. Do they have other people coming into the center of younger ages? Where I work at the independent living, they bring in tech support help people. The one time it was a gentleman, I'm guessing he was in his 20s. It's hard to say, but he comes in to help. If you need help with your phone or other electronic devices, you come to the lobby and he can help you out. So having those kind of opportunities, um, and
Well,
I like what you mentioned, thinking about whether it's college campuses or wherever where you have the opportunities to intermix different generations.
they call them public facing venues like shopping centers, coffee shops, things like that. And I'm guessing meaning that they literally, like on a campus or whatever, they're literally facing out to the university itself versus outside of it. Um, but you mentioned about, and it made me, this is all coming through as we're doing this because we didn't study on this as much as we
Anyways,
probably
just
could have,
share.
but thinking about, I remember when my grandma moved in with us,
Hmm.
and it was myself. I don't think Vernon was living at home at the time. I'm trying to remember, and myself, and then my mom and her. And she wasn't a big talker, but when I did get a chance to ask her questions, I was able, she came up with some wisdom, and I learned about her that I didn't learn about. You know, I found out that my grandmother, who at the time was 83 or something like that she loved guns, that she loved riding horses, you know, and I never thought about it. We tend, and I think that's one sad part about this. We don't tend to learn about the past life of our relatives and what's going on, what they were like. It would be nice to understand that, you know, I often think about my dad, and am I on the same path as he is? Did he do some of the stuff I did? We unfortunately lost him kind of early. I didn't get to find that out, but learning these things can be beneficial, can help you in your own life and feeling like you're going in the right direction or whatever it is. But I always wonder if he thinks the same way I did, if he did a lot of the things I did, or what his life was like. But anyway, so by learning these different intergenerational with great grandfathers, grandfathers, whatever, what we learn about them, and I think it's a learning experience for all of us to get that.
It gives perspective too. You talk to people, my grandparents' generation, that survived the Depression and their way of saving things, whether it was your grandmother who didn't she save the tops of tissue
Oh,
boxes or
she saved a lot of stuff. Yeah, it was a whole
and
drawer full of these.
and we look at that and go, oh, they're crazy, but it's like when you understand the life and how they grew up, to understand the difference in their life. We had my mom over recently for her birthday dinner, and it's our kids and our son's girlfriend. So it's the six of us and my mom. And I know she comes and joins. She loves the games that we play. We've taught her some new games, and because she lives in an independent living community now. And I remember, I stopped and I said, Mom, what were birthdays like when you were a kid? I don't know that I'd ever asked her that before. And she had to stop and think about it. And all she could remember was she had a big sweet 16 party that her mom did a lot of cooking. They invited all the family over. There was a whole bunch of people there. But it's like I'd never thought to ask my mom that. I can't remember if she ever shared anything, because I know how birthdays were when I was a kid. And, we know, how we experience it with as we've raised our kids with birthdays. And so, yeah, just asking those different questions. I mean, my mom has lived up near us. We've spent a lot of time with her with caring for my dad. And it's fun to engage in these kind of conversations. It kind of stepping outside. Um, I don't know what the word is, but because I know you talked about Don when birthdays when you were a kid that you only had friends over for a party, and like not
Well,
every year, but
yeah,
on
and I
the
don't even know what those dates were. One for some
5
reason
or 10 or 15.
I was five. One of them I remember was a five, and then I don't know if I saw one at like 10, and then the next thing I remember was like graduation or something around there. So
And it's
I
hard
don't
to know
know.
as we get older. We forget things. Like even my
Yeah,
mom trying to remember birthdays when she was a kid. She was the oldest of seven, and who knows what it was like. There was always babies around when she was growing up. Um, so looking at these different components of interacting with different generations and having that opportunity. My parents lived at a 55 plus community for a number of years. And in the summer, when we get together and my brother and his kids would come down, we'd want to go to the pool, where their community had a rule where it only allowed people under, it was either 16 or 8, maybe under 18, at certain family pool hours. The other hours were not allowed. I guess some seniors don't want to be in the pool with splashing children. I personally never understood that because I love kids and I love being around kids,
um,
and I can't imagine that changing. I'm 55 now. Um, that I wouldn't want that opportunity.
yeah.
Maybe if my grandkids lived real close to me and I saw them all the time, I don't know. But it always baffled me. Like I just find it joyful to see kids and kids laughing and goofing and little kids, even if they're acting up and crying. If they're not my own kids, it's a beautiful thing to watch. And just yeah, having that opportunity. So thinking about that, and 55 plus communities also have intergenerational people because you can be 55 and live there, you can be 85 and live there. So thinking about that is spanning at least two if not three generations. And yet um yeah, I just think there's a benefit to crossing that barrier of retired and not retired, that something
Well, I think retirement is um, not as much as it used to be. I think too many people are having to work beyond what most have considered as retirement age, even 65. The people
sure,
are still
there's a
working
lot of people working part-time jobs or doing other
because
things or
money's a little tight, a little whatever that they're doing it. So they not everybody's retiring.
well, and a lot of people don't have, pensions anymore.
Yeah,
I work in healthcare and I work part-time, but even if I was full-time, there's no pension. I mean, I have a 401k I can opt into, but there's no pension. Someone asked me not too long ago when I said I had been an OT for 30 years, and I said, "Have you thought about retiring?" And I'm like, that's a further thing from my mind. Like, I'm in no
yeah, I
financial
know. It's
position to think about retiring. And, I guess there are still companies out there where there are pensions and things where you get, the sum of money because obviously what we get from Medicare is measly and small, no matter. Um,
Well, one of the articles I read, and I'm trying to think why they were talking about it, but they said the average savings for a person, I think they talked about over 65, on average was only like $202,000, which you can't retire on that. There's,
Yeah.
that's kind of sad. But
Yeah, it's, the cost of living has gone up so dramatically, and it creates a challenge. And I mean, I see this where I work. There's a lot of people that live in this independent living building. Independent living means they serve meals, they have housekeeping services. If you need any physical assistance, that's separate. That's not provided. Um, versus assisted living, but you're talking two or $3,000 difference per month
mm,
in price. And a lot of these people can't afford assisted living. Um, and so you have people living there that really probably need more care than they're getting, have challenges with taking their medicines properly. Are they more prone to other injuries because of that? I have to do a specific study, but I see the reality of this, and even living in independent living community is costly. Um, um,
well,
for seniors. And
that might be why this idea of intergenerational living, even if it's not family, if you have to intermingle people and staying in a place to for younger people, it might be they can't afford to, and for older people, they need somebody there, somewhat to help them along too. So it could be another reason that's coming back, or they're looking at that kind of living space, I guess.
somewhere I worked, they had a dance for the seniors, and like a local baseball team, I don't know if it was college level or whatever, they came in to dance. And a lot of places have a lot of widows and a lot of widowed women because women still do live longer than men. And so, these young men coming in and getting to dance with these ladies, and just having that opportunity to feel young again, to feel, um, and they're probably the age of maybe their grandson or something, but having that opportunity, is just, I think those type of experiences are beneficial to all. And that's what they're talking about with this intergenerational mingling, as well as building intergenerational friendships. And like you talked about, the mentoring services provided by retired people and businesses that can support younger people growing businesses. And I guess we can dig into other organizations that out there that exist like this. And we'd love to talk to, if you know someone who's involved in something like this. We're always looking for people to interview around this topic. So do send us a quick note about that.
So this is our podcast for today. We hope you enjoyed it. We ask you to think about wherever you might be listening to this, giving us a comment about what you'd like to hear more of. If this intergenerational is something that you have uh, some expertise in, we would love to have you on. If you're in one of the podcast platforms, make sure to uh, give us a like and like I say, a comment too. You can find out more about what Gina and I do, the consultations that we do through Gina with her work and what she can do. My work with an EFT and helping the caregivers and the people that are dealing with the aging loved one, plus the aging loved one too. I can help kind of calm the nerves that can be raised when you're in that place. Also, you can join me every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's on Zoom. You can find out more about this tapping process I do and how it can calm you down at any point. You can simply go to focushealthyfamily.com/EFT dash group. You can find out more about us at our website, focusedhealthyfamily.com. We're also on Facebook at Focused Healthy Family. We're on Instagram at Focused Healthy Family 1 and YouTube at Focused Healthy Family. And you can join us each Thursday when we put this out. We usually do it first thing in the morning. And we have had all kinds of interviews on this podcast that it would be great if you could look at our archive and see all the different things that we've talked about. Um,
And if you see something that you think of a friend, like, oh, they'd benefit from hearing this, please share it. Send them the information. You can listen anywhere you listen to podcasts, or you can listen and watch on YouTube.
and so remember, how you speak to your children and your loved ones today shapes their future and yours.